Hello, welcome to a Gamasutra video interview. Today I'm talking to David Board from Stage 2 Studios about his game Lifeless Planet. Hello, David. How are you doing?
Hey Mike, how's it going?
It's going okay, thank you very much. Probably the way we should start is you can probably describe what is going on with you, how you're sort of part of the games industry, and also what the game is about as well.
Yeah. So I don't know. I guess I've been a gamer since the '80s. That'll date me a little bit, but started off on a little Commodore VIC 20 and moved to Atari ST and then PC games and little Xbox, that sort of thing. But uh, career-wise, I got into graphic design, and the web came along. Quickly got into web design and development as well, but obviously. Being a designer, but also having kind of interest in computers, those combine really well. And I've dabbled in games since, like I said, back in the '80s, building kind of my own little projects and stuff. And I've done a number of Flash games through the years as for a part of my business kind of side of things.
Mm.
But Lifeless Planet is the first full kind of a feature-length game that I've ever built. And the idea came over 2 years ago now. Um, and just sort of started to click in terms of the story and the type of game I wanted to do. I wanted to do an adventure game, something I thought that would be within my means to produce, um, versus some kind of crazy multiplayer extravaganza or something.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and of course, one thing I've learned 2 years later is that even limiting scope, things can take longer to finish. Um, but finally, we're at alpha, and I've now played through beginning to end, and that's a really good feeling.
Mm.
Uh, but yeah, I went to Kickstarter, as you know, for some funding, but also to kind of get a feel for do other people who want to play a game like this. And the response was overwhelming. Of course, since then, Kickstarter has really let loose, and there's just been a ton of success stories there. I ran into Tim Schafer at PAX Prime a couple of months ago, last fall, and the first thing he said to me was, "Well, don't run out of money." And so I was telling him, yeah, I was really excited about our success, Lifeless Planet, and then they came along and made me look silly. But no, I mean, I'm very thankful for Kickstarter and all the things it introduced to us in terms of we have a publisher and hundreds of people pre-ordered the game and lots of exposure. So that was a great experience. But to get into Lifeless Planet, it's a third-person action adventure. It's for me sort of a throwback to some of the old sci-fi films and TV shows I used to enjoy when I was younger. Stuff like Twilight Zone, some of the old black and white sort of Cold War sci-fi stories. It's about a mission to an Earth-like planet, light years away. But then by the time you arrive, you find that all life on the planet has died off. And so instead of this beautiful, lush planet, it's a barren wasteland. You have to go searching for your missing crew members, and as you do, you make a more startling discovery, evidence that humans have lived on this planet before your arrival. And eventually, you come across an abandoned Soviet-era Russian town. So, of course, lots of questions. Did you really travel to another planet? Is your mission some kind of a hoax? Um, or did you travel so fast at light speeds that you travel back in time? So you're just really not sure whether to believe anything that you're seeing for a while. But as you're going and looking for answers, looking for your crew, you do discover there is one sort of lone survivor, a Russian woman who doesn't speak any English. She runs off. You follow after her in hope of answers. And everywhere she walks, for some reason, biological or otherwise, you don't know, but her feet leave glowing green footprints behind her. And so you can kind of use these as a guide across the planet as you solve puzzles or some platforming, exploration, trying to find unravel the mysteries of the planet and survive the lifeless planet.
Yeah. So like I remember when I talked to you it must have been back in 2011 I would think, just as the Kickstarter
Yeah,
was running.
that was.
And I remember you saying sort of like you were aiming for a sort of ICO style thing going on, with sort of opening out into wide open spaces and then having smaller, tighter packed puzzles. I mean, do you feel like you've managed to do that?
Yeah, I think that is still, I, I try not to sound egotistical when I talk about Eco. I mean, to me, that's just such an iconic and awesome game. But I mean, I'm one guy making a game. I think people understand that, and that's the sort of feel that I'm trying to do. And I think that game still probably is the best way to describe the gameplay, in that it's a third-person game. Um, its emphasis is not on combat, although Eco had combat. Lifeless Planet does not per se.
Hmm.
Uh, but yeah, it's sort of this feel of sort of a little guy in a big, huge, vast, mysterious world, and the kind of in Eco, the world itself was sort of the puzzle and the mystery, that castle environment.
Yeah.
Of course, Lifeless Planet um, has a lot of differences as well. Other games that I've always referred back to would be Another World, or it's called Out of This World in the U.S. I think, um, and and even the LucasArts Adventures. Just kind of that story-driven narrative, but also room for exploration. I really, really loved that adventure game, The Dig,
Mm.
back in the '90s. And so there's a little bit, obviously, of that sort of a sci-fi vibe to this story as well.
Yeah. So yeah, like kind of you touched on the Kickstarter stuff. I mean, it's sort of funny to watch. Like you were saying, you sort of you ran your Kickstarter, and then what? It must have just been months later that the Double Fine Kickstarter happened, and
Right.
Kickstarter sort of started to explode. I mean, how are you finding it? Sort of continuing to fund your game, because I'm guessing like from that what now looks like quite a small amount of money for a Kickstarter,
Right.
compared to what other people are kind of pulling in. I mean, how are you managing to sort of manage the cash that you brought in from the Kickstarter against development of it?
Yeah. So I mean, on the one hand, that's exactly what I thought. I thought, oh, for once in my life, I got ahead of the curve, and then then things really exploded, and I was like, oh man, I struck too early.
Yeah.
But what I found is, like, sites like RPS, they'll run a weekly Kickstarter update, and there's 20 or 30 Kickstarters mentioned in there.
Yeah.
When I was kind of coming to it early, I was able to get exposure on sites that were just sort of discovering Kickstarter, and
Mm.
Double Fine hadn't happened. And through that, I ended up getting a publisher. We're now accepted on Steam. So the things that it's sort of the bird in the hand analogy, where I'm very happy with the success that the game got, and I'll likely be on Kickstarter again in the future. I have some other projects I'd love to take there as well. So um, yeah, and it's definitely allowed me to sort of create a little army of individuals that are out there kind of promoting the game as well, and that's really huge too.
Yeah. And I
And
mean,
basically,
oh sorry, go on.
no, I was just saying it's helpful to have folks that can beta test as well. Several hundred people sign up for that too.
Oh
So
yeah, I bet. Yeah, I mean, I remember talking to you as well, and you were saying you were sort of shooting for roughly kind of July 2012 with the release, and obviously
mhm.
like that sort of hasn't happened. I mean, how
Yeah.
how did you find yourself overshooting there?
Well, it was a couple of things. I mean, again, just straight up, being my first feature-length game, I did not comprehend quite the scope that it would entail. On the other hand, when I went to Kickstarter, I went with a goal of 8,000. I made 17. I actually thought in my head it would take me 30,000, um, in terms of my time away from my business.
Mm.
And so I went to the idea if I can raise half that with Kickstarter, then I'm probably in good shape. But then, of course, when it did get so much publicity and so much success there, and people just really got excited about this idea of the story behind the game too, I thought, well, okay, I'm not gonna, make necessarily that more limited scope game, and you see that a lot. If you blow past your 200% of your goal
Mm.
for a Kickstarter, then you want to make a really good game too. But on the other hand, life has gotten in the way. I am a single developer, and
Yes, that's right. Years ago.
my plan originally was to obviously supplement funding
Well, friends
with
thought maybe
my
something was
business,
going on,
and
but
at the same time, I've had to keep that going to survive. So
Yeah.
looking at this,
you see some interesting
I searched for you.
solutions. I've told my backers the good news is because I do have a business that brings in income,
Mm.
uh, they're not at risk of a project here that's going to run out of funds, but it does mean that it's added more time to the project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so the plan now is that if I've got this right, you are aiming for Steam Early Access. Is it end of this month?
Yeah, either later this month or early next, and we haven't announced an official date on that, but I want to get that to folks sooner than later. So yeah, that could be in just a few weeks here.
Okay.
Don't have a firm date, sorry, but we're approaching middle of January, yeah, at this point. So I would say it might be very early February here, coming up though soon. So that's the plan.
Excellent. And then what's the plan from then on? Is it sort of to build it then into the full release over the coming months after that?
Yeah, absolutely. And we haven't announced again official date.
Mm.
And I said that in my Kickstarter too, in regards to the unknowns. I've always been clear that I'm not I can't until I get closer set a firm date just because I don't know. But in this case, we are getting close. We have alpha. Um, it's a pretty solid alpha, honestly. There's not a ton of content left to go in. In fact, there's very little new content. But obviously, with feedback, we want to tweak things. I mean, talking with you the other day, you mentioned the camera. There's little things we do want to do that will make a big difference. And so the issue is, just how long will that take?
Yeah.
Um, Again, understanding I've never actually been able to be 100% full time on the project, and of course that's not uncommon with indie projects too. But we're thinking, yeah, spring. I'll be really frustrated if we get to summer and it doesn't come out by summer. So
Yeah.
no firm date, but definitely shooting strong for the next few months here.
Excellent. Right. Well, I think I've burned through the so this was this the PAX demo I've just played here? Is that right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I don't see your screen, so I don't know
Yeah.
how awesomely you did, but
I was amazing. I was amazing all the way through.
well,
I
good
practiced it
luck.
like 5 times though, so it's okay.
Right.
um, yeah. So yeah, what you've just been watching is Lifeless Planet, and this is as we've just been discussing, going to be available at in the beginning of February, and it's seeming pretty darn fun. So that's good news because obviously I've been
Yeah.
following this now since the Kickstarter. So what's that? Two
Over
and a tiny
2 years.
bit years,
Yeah.
um, which is
Yeah, and the
yeah.
only thing I add about that little demo level you played there is that's one of 20 diverse levels. If you've seen the latest trailer, there's some pretty unique environments. And the game sort of has several layers of reveals and irony to the story and that sort of thing too. So as you go along, it's more interesting than people say. Wandering around the desert, that's not going to be fun. But obviously, I went into the project knowing that that would be the biggest issue, is to make sure that while some of the levels are linear, some are more open, and all of them allow for exploration. But there's also always a goal and some kind of indication of where to go to kind of get to that next level. So yeah.
Excellent. Right, well, thank you very much for talking to me. This has been
Yeah.
fascinating, and
Nice to see you, Mike.
yeah, and I'm hoping it's going to do well for you because it's clearly a labour of love. So
Yeah. Absolutely.
brilliant. Right, well, yeah, thanks again.
All right. Thanks, Mike.